Morning, Jeff. You're live.
Yep, thank you.
Great. So this is the first meeting of the newly constituted Board of Ethics. It took us a little longer than we wanted to actually organize the first meeting, but I'm glad we're all here. And the first thing we'll have to do technically is select a chairperson. But before doing that, I just thought it'd be helpful to go around the virtual room and just introduce ourselves.
Why don't you start?
Yeah. Who are you, Yoram?
And Norm, you do have to open the meeting.
Oh, yep. So let's call this, open the meeting and call it to order. And so this is the January 25th meeting of the Village of Mamaroneck Board of Ethics. I am Yoram Miller. Prior to our selecting a chairperson, which is our first order of business, we'll just all go around the room and introduce ourselves. I have been a resident of Mamaroneck for about 17 years. I have one son who's a senior in the Rhinebeck school system now. Career-wise, I am a commercial litigator. Until the pandemic, I worked in the city. Now I managed to work from home. And I've been on the ethics board for approximately 2 years now. Jeff, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a continuing member of the Board of Ethics. I have a local law practice right here in Mamaroneck that was started by my grandfather in 1897. So I've been around quite a while, and I know what buildings were there before they were torn down and new ones built. I have 3 kids. I'm married. I live in a house right across the street from St. Thomas's Church. And my kids went to Mamaroneck High School, and they're all out and seem to be productive. That's it. My other volunteer stuff is currently, which is why I don't want to be chairman of this committee, is that I'm also the president of the board of LMC Media, which takes up a great amount of my time, and we have a lot of interesting projects going on at the moment.
Well, I'm Shari Allison, and I was on the board of the Arts Council for many, many years. We've lived in Rhinebeck for about 15 years. All my kids have graduated from Rhinebeck High School, and I am a production manager for TV. Have been working for Disney for 30 some odd years and just got furloughed, which is annoying. But and here I am.
So it's my turn. Okay, so I'm Susan Behrens-Weig. I'm new. I've never said yes to any encouragement to participate, although I've been the chairman of and the president of many other boards, but not village things. I live in Shore Acres. So actually 3 of us are in Rhinebeck. I've been counting. I don't know. I think that's interesting because Mamaroneck is such a big village and Rhinebeck is so much smaller. But so my first house I bought in 76. And Hunter Megan, how was he related to you, Jeff?
He's my uncle. He was my uncle. He passed away in 2008.
Right. So he was.
He lived in Orienta.
He was. I that part I don't know. I just know the name because he was the lawyer on the other side of the sellers when I bought the house in 76. So I've been in Shore Acres in 3 separate houses actually since then.
Mm-hmm.
For many, many years. The house that I'm in now is I bought in 94. I'm a psychologist, and I work right now only in private practice. And even that was before COVID. I was at the Center for Preventive Psychiatry, which is now called Andrus Children's Center, for about 20 years. And I was an adjunct at Furkhoff Graduate School of Psychology for 5 years, and that ended about 8 years ago. So, and actually I haven't taught, but I've supervised psychology interns for many years, and ethics in psychology is a big deal. I know what the ethics code in psychology is. I've done a lot of training in terms of what we can do and what conflicts are that come up with our patients and the other people that we work with. So this felt reasonable for me to say yes to this. I care about the village of Mamaroneck. I've been here for what, over 50 years, no, 45 years in this village. So it's time for me to give something back. I don't have a lot of time. I'm still working. My two children are grown. My son lives in Brooklyn. My daughter lives in Boston. And I am proud to say that I have had my first vaccination for COVID. So the second one is coming next week. And anytime you're ready to have a meeting on, I can meet with you. But that's sort of showing off, just that it changed the way I think about the future. Could I say it that way? One more thing about me. The email that you have, Sally, and that the village has, is not an email that I use. I only gave you for this because I don't want things coming in from the public to come into the emails that I look at all the time. I actually have two for different reasons. So if you want to get in touch with me,
I think we straightened it out, Susan. I think we only have this email for you now on our distribution list.
Okay, but what I'm saying is if you, the people who know me and want to get in touch with me on a timely basis, you can do my last name, Berenzweig @gmail. But don't give it to anybody. Don't give it to anybody else. What were you going to say, Yoram?
I was just going to warn you that we're actually on a live feed, so other people can hear what we're saying now. So
Thank you for warning me. I don't have that email. That was wrong. That was wrong. But anyway, so hello everybody out there in whatever land. But you got it. Thank you, Sally.
You're welcome. And just briefly, I'm Sally Roberts, the deputy clerk. I'm also secretary to this board, so I'll be staffing your meetings. We are not holding board and committee meetings except for land use and board of trustees until April with village employees staffing. I can do this one. I'm not sure what will happen going forward until April. So we will cross that bridge. Yoram, you do need a second to your motion to open the meeting, and then you need a vote.
Second.
It doesn't.
all in favor of opening the meeting?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're now in open session.
One other thing, sir, if you could also appoint a secretary so someone is doing your minutes. Thank you.
So I guess the first thing is we need to choose a chairman. I had tried to volunteer Jeff for it, but as you know, Jeff has got other commitments already.
We have two new members. By the way, what's with Mike Newgard? Is he?
I actually ran into Mike in the street a few days ago. He has sent his resignation over to the mayor, so he's formally resigning now.
Okay. I mean, I've been on the committee now for a couple of years, and Yoram's been on for a couple of years. And with all due respect to the other new folks, I would nominate Yoram only because he knows the routine. He's and he knows the village folks and so forth. And I think he'd be a terrific chairman of this committee. So I would nominate him.
That need to be seconded?
Yeah,
I guess we need to see if there are other nominations or if anybody else wants to be chair. So with that, I guess we'll put it to a vote in terms of all in favor of designating me chair.
Aye.
Aye.
So
You could vote for yourself, Yoram.
Aye. I don't know. That feels like a conflict.
Yeah, it's an ethical conflict.
And then we'll also, as Sally pointed out, need to select a secretary. Does anybody want to serve as secretary?
Oh.
And I can tell you that generally just involves preparing the meetings, which are, is typical for a board like this. It's not a tremendously taxing role.
Well, I guess I could do it.
Yay.
I'd have to find a notebook though.
Sherry, just to let you know, these meetings are recorded, so you can watch them at any time. There's also a text recording of them, so you could read what was said at any time if you need to do that. And taking the minutes, really all you need is who motioned to open the meeting, motion second voted, and then any action you take. Anything else does not have to be recorded.
Oh, so it's not like the Arts Council where we write everything down.
No one has to do that, no.
Sherry, I'll send you some of the approved minutes from some of the recent meetings, so you'll see
Great.
what it actually entails. It's not.
Yeah, they're quite brief, so.
Yeah.
Brief is good. I like brief.
So I guess we'll do the same thing. All in favor of having Sherry serve as secretary? Aye.
Aye.
So with that done, we can now move on to just some of the mechanics of what we're doing. And part of this is going to be challenged by the limitations on meetings that the village is putting on us until April. One of the biggest things we do this time of year is review the annual disclosure forms that come in. And as Sally mentioned, they're starting to come in now. They'll be due at the end of the month. So in early February, we'll start having a pool to review. Typically, what we would all do is we'd go in a conference room and just pass the forms around until everybody had seen all the forms. And if we identify any issues that look like they weren't filled in completely or accurately, or it's for whatever reason there's follow-up needed, we would collectively decide how to do that. Just because of the restrictions on meetings, what I was hoping to do is we'll find some mechanism that we'll get electronic versions of the disclosure forms once Sally receives them. And just we'll take turns reviewing them electronically, one at a time. And Jeff and I will start, and you can see what we flagged. Due to the open meeting laws, we can't more than 3 of us meet at a time. But I'm happy just to have one-on-one calls when you get the packet, just to describe sort of what is the process to review it. And it's a pretty straightforward process.
What do you mean the open meeting laws that we 3 at a time? Or?
The village has various laws that require us to essentially be open to the public. So for example, our meeting now is being streamed so that in theory, anybody who wants to see what we're doing can see. The 2 big issues for that will affect us is we need to give 72 hours notice before having a meeting, and no more than 2 of us can speak at a time about Board of Ethics matters without having a formal meeting. And so those are the 2 issues. So feel free to reach out to any one individual board member with any questions, but if we're going to have something that involves 3 or more of us, we have to have a formal meeting. The one caveat with that I would give is assume any email we send between each other can be discovered through the FOIL process. And so just be mindful of what you put down in email or any other form, because it is going to be something that ultimately we can expect the public could see. Yeah, which is why if, for example, Susan, we should just stick with your specific email address here.
Yeah,
Because if there is a FOIL request, I don't want you to have to go through your personal email address.
I can't do that. There's HIPAA stuff with that too. So just use this for everything. Call me if you need me right away.
That sounds perfect.
Norm, if I can interrupt you for just a
Please,
moment.
thanks.
The open meetings law is actually a state law, Committee on Open Government. Susan, if you're interested, I can send you the link to the open meetings law and also to the Freedom of Information law.
I know about the freedom of information, and I think I just heard what I need to know about the open meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Sally, while you're still with us, is there still a question about what to do with village personnel who technically aren't on the list of people required to fill in disclosure forms, but really sort of fit within the group of people that should be getting the disclosure forms?
No, I haven't gotten an answer to that, Yorman. It's probably something that the board would need to review as they came up with the list to begin with. It seems to me like our planner does want to fill it out. And so I don't think there's a problem with allowing someone who wants to fill it out to do it, even though they're not on the list. That might be something that the Ad Hoc Ethics Code Review Committee may want to look at.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I should explain a little bit. The village code has a list of officials that are required to fill out the annual disclosures. It also has a provision for updating that list in due time. It hasn't been updated in a while, so the list is a bit dated, and we have some positions that would make perfect sense to have them fill out the disclosure forms, but they're not required to. And the question that came up is what to do about that. And it seems like I think Sally hit on a sort of perfect middle ground, which is anybody who's in a position that it makes sense that they would fill out the form, even if they're not required to, we'll give them the form. What will happen if they don't fill it out is there's nothing we'll be able to do about it, but at least if someone's willing to voluntarily do it, by all means, the more transparency, the better on that. And if you guys have any other thoughts on that, that's great, but I think that's a pretty easy way to deal with it. And hopefully the list will be updated in the next year, and at that point, they'll actually have a comprehensive set of people.
Did we have to do that?
We do.
Yes.
If you didn't get one, just ask Sally, and Sally can resend the.
I'm not sure if I did or not.
Susan, I did send one to all of the members, and also there was an ad there, the ethics code. You need to review the ethics code and sign off that you reviewed it. And that you are going to get from Karen Johnson from the village office, and to go through our document management software to review that document and then sign off that you read it. If you can't find the disclosure form, it's a fillable PDF. I'm happy to send it to you again. Just let me know.
Send it to me again. I think I may have done that very early on, and I was spending more time looking at the code than the other stuff. So we'll see.
Yoram, you might explain about the ad hoc committee, which is running parallel to us,
Yep.
I guess.
During the Cindy Goldstein hearing, a lot of questions were raised about the village code. It was probably the first time in more than 2 decades the village had sort of on a sustained basis discussed the code and how the ethics code works and ideas people had and didn't have in terms of what to do with it. And out of that process, the Board of Trustees formed an ad hoc committee that is currently evaluating the ethics code and going to make recommendations in terms of how to go forward. Back in the fall, the then constituted Board of Ethics met with them, and we shared our thoughts in terms of what was working, which in general, we think the code actually is pretty effective. It addresses some of the major concerns that we would have. It does so in a way that we feel fairly balances the rights of people that are whose conduct has been questioned, and importantly, also potential whistleblowers and people that are called in as witnesses. Nobody wants to be called in as a witness. We have heard rumors that there were attempts to chill people or freeze out people that did cooperate with the Board of Ethics in the past. So we were very concerned about that and feel it's very important that the whistleblower protections remain strong. At the same time, we feel it's important that the Board of Ethics, if it's going to conduct investigations, have the tools to conduct meaningful ones that respect everybody's privacy. And we shared those thoughts with the ad hoc committee, and I know that that's something that's still ongoing in the village. But for now, we have the existing code, which in some ways it's a little dated, but it really does. We feel pretty good about it, and that it serves its objectives. And one of the big ones being to have a higher expectation in terms of the ethical conduct of village officials than the bare floor that the state law provides. And so that's something that the exact code that we're applying may change. And in some ways, there are some things that can be updated. There have been some very good ideas in terms of how to restructure it. But that's where we are. And at this point, we're still working with the existing code, which, like I said, there have been some ideas to strengthen it, improve it in some ways that we're very fond of, but the code that we have now works, and we really do believe in it, which actually ties into one of the other things that one of our other responsibilities, the sort of on the calendar, the one that always comes up, I mentioned, is the review of the disclosure forms. The next one is we're available to give advisory opinions to anyone in the village that has a question about how the code applies to them. And It's going to be a little trickier for us now because of the restrictions on meetings, but I'm optimistic that if we do have a request for an advisory opinion at that point, I'm assuming we'll find a way to have a Zoom call and discuss that process. And that's the thing that I think in the last year or so has improved quite a bit, is we've had more of those requests for advisory opinions, and it's just much better if someone comes to us and asks for advice, and we have access to the village attorney for questions that we have. And so in that way, we don't have to feel as if we're sort of stumbling through things that may not be our areas of expertise. We have a village attorney who is very well versed in this that we can lean on both for advice and help with drafting whatever opinions we come up with. They tend to be informal, but we tend to want to move quickly because usually when someone reaches out to us, it involves something, there's going to be work done on my house in a week. Is this appropriate for me to be involved in it? Those kinds of questions. And so we do have to usually move pretty quickly when that happens. We haven't had one in a few months, but we did have a run there that we had a few advisory opinions. The next piece of what we do typically, and this for various reasons, and I know it was a frustration to some of the board in past years, we're supposed to help with training for village officials, both elected and employees, so they'll understand the obligations under the ethics code. That hasn't happened so much with our restrictions on meetings and the fact that usually what training has happened later in the year. That's something that when we start in April and we sort of have the ability to have our full set of meetings, it'd be nice for us to collectively figure out ideas for training that might work and see if we can't get the Board of Trustees to sign off on some of those things. But that's something that is a little bit in the future for us. And then the last thing we are available for is to conduct investigations or, if necessary, hearings into potential violations of the ethics code. Now, I don't think the Board of Ethics has ever been very proactive in trying to find violations. It's not as if we listen to every village board meeting and we see if someone failed to recuse themselves or if there is some latent conflict. Occasionally, the disclosure forms themselves flag an issue that we will have to look at. But more often, it's somebody who's concerned in the village, sometimes elected officials, sometimes other board members, sometimes employees, and occasionally, but it hasn't happened as often, people just outside the village or structure itself that raise issues to our attention. And at that point, we will look at whatever information is brought to us, decide whether it warrants a formal investigation. If that is required, we'll go through that process. Depending on how the issue is brought to our attention, if it's a formal sworn complaint, we will have to resolve it formally. If it's more of a somebody alerting us to an issue that troubled them, we have the option whether to proceed with a formal investigation or to look at it informally first. And then ultimately, which, as you know, happened a couple of years ago, occasionally an issue rises to the level that we end up having a hearing. And that's something that is done very much like a typical administrative hearing. And there's one open matter of litigation that we'll discuss in the executive session. And we also have one other issue relating to a investigation that we'll discuss in executive session. But that pretty much is a sense of what we do. Most years, this doesn't require a whole lot of time, and it's not all that controversial. And unfortunately, lately, what we've done is become a little more politicized and has been, when we do have a full-blown investigation and hearing, it does become more time-consuming. But like I said, that happened. We've had one of those in my tenure. I know people that preceded me told me it's been very rare. But that's the one thing that we do that can really become time-consuming. I would like to go into executive session to discuss some matters that relate to ongoing litigation and personnel matters in the village. But before we do that, is there anything more general that you guys want to talk about or have questions about? Then I'll move to go into executive session When we do that, you'll have the other Zoom link that Sally sent. If you don't have the link, let me know.
I second that, so we'll have to vote to go into executive session.
I've got the link.
Okay, great. Sherry, do you have the link as well?
Yeah, I think I do.
Perfect. So with Jeff having seconded my motion, all in favor of going into executive session, say aye. When we do that, we will, aye. Okay, before we hang up, what we'll do is we'll all have to hang up from this Zoom call, go in on the other Zoom call for executive session. At the end of executive session, we'll vote to go back to regular session, in which case we'll hang up from that Zoom link and return to the original Zoom link we used for this. And Sally, we'll just let you know when we come out of executive session.
But that's fine. Thank you.
Great. So everybody, I will see you in a few seconds on the other Zoom link.
So should I leave this one? Should we click leave? Yes?
Yeah, you have to close it to be able to join the other one. So. Sally, will we have to vote to go? We voted to close executive session. Do we need to vote to go back into open session as well?
No, Yoram, you're good.
So we're ready to go into whenever you want to start streaming.
I'm good.
Okay, great. So we just concluded an executive session where we dealt with some pending litigation as well as a personnel matter. From that executive session, the Board of Ethics has authorized me to request another meeting that will be held in executive session to address a pending personnel matter. And we will be seeking the assistance and permission of the village to do so as soon as possible. With that, I think that concludes our business. And does anybody want to move to adjourn the meeting?
I'll move.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All in favor of adjourning?
Hi.
Hi,
All right.
nice to
thank
meet you, ladies.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Nice to be
you.
here. Thank you.
Thank
It's a
you.
privilege.
Thanks, Sally.